Welcome. Bienvenuto, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So, Patrick, we already know your name. We already know where you studied abroad. But if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what program you did in Florence, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, just take the floor.
All right. So my name is Patrick 𝗟𝗧'𝗦. I studied abroad when I was a junior spring semester in Florence, Italy. And although it was cut short due to COVID-19, it was probably the best 5 weeks that I spent anywhere traveling.
And I always love to ask students this question. How long did it take you to acclimate once you did arrive in Florence?
I don't think it took too long to adjust to everything because of the staff. It was so great. It was so kind of easy to adjust and make connections with people already. So it didn't feel like a whole kind of shift. It just felt like, starting a new process. And I think probably by the time that I did leave because of COVID that I was completely adjusted to this life. So I think maybe for some it takes like a few weeks, but definitely for me it probably took about a week.
Nice. Yeah, they say it takes about 3 weeks to form a habit. So if you got it down in a week, you're a pro. When you were choosing your program, were you set on Florence from the beginning? Did you kind of mull over other options?
Yeah, so I studied abroad in high school for like a 2-week program in France. So I knew I wanted to go back to Europe and somewhere different than France. And then I started looking into Rome programs actually. And it just seemed like too big of a city for me a little bit. I wanted something that was a little quieter and that, it had that same charm as Rome, but then also wasn't as busy and overwhelming. And so that's why I chose the Florence program because one of the actually old alumni ambassadors who worked at my college studied abroad in Florence, and she said it was the perfect fit for her because she wanted a city, but not like an overwhelming.
So can you tell us a little about, so your full-term semester, so full-time student status, a little bit about what classes you took? Is there one that still stands out to you, one that was incredibly challenging? What did your classes look like?
Yeah, so my classes kind of looked totally different than what I usually take here at my American university or college. I take mostly, communication classes as a communication major. So going abroad, I definitely wanted to kind of break outside of what I was taking. So I took a history of Italian Mafia class, a woman in Italian society class, Italian food and culture, and then my Italian language class. But my favorite easily had to be the Italian food and culture class because during that, we were able to go to the markets and able to try food samples, and we were able to even, I think later in the semester, there's going to be cooking classes offered if we're able to stay, and wine tasting classes, so that was a huge seller. Easily my favorite.
People don't realize until you physically get there, they say the food is going to be good, what have you, but it's like integral to the culture, the social aspects of Italy. It's just a staple of like their way of life. It's not just, all right, we're going to have 3 meal times a day. It's like that's when everyone gathers and they'll spend hours eating meals. I personally really enjoyed that.
That was like the biggest shock. Usually in America, like a dinner's like 30 minutes, and there you'd be at a restaurant for like 2.5 hours, and it'd be 10 o'clock by the time you left. So that was a big difference for me.
You said you took a history of Italian Mafia class. What might we not know about the Italian Mafia that you learned in this class? Because I'm sure we have a vision of what it might be like based off of Hollywood movies and whatnot, but what did you learn in that class that was unique?
I learned so much that I thought I knew the Mafia before I went, but my whole image of the Mafia is completely changed now. Probably that they were involved with some of the American invasion into Italy during World War II, which I didn't know about, is that the United States Army actually used the Mafia to help them, or is suspected to have helped them get into the ground in Sicily to invade the Nazis. So that was something really interesting I learned.
And what's cool about these classes is they're not always in the practice of just learning in a classroom, right? You go on site, you have this experiential learning. For any of your classes, was there a museum or a historical site or anything like that that you got to visit that you'd like to share?
For my food culture class, we went to the main marketplace and we tried the different fresh pasta, some fresh cannolis. For our Mafia class, one of the security guards who survived a bombing in the 1990s was going to come and talk to our class about how he survived one of the Mafia bombings that killed one of the main spokespeople in Sicily. So that would have been really interesting if we could have had that.
In terms of the things that you missed, maybe top 3 things when you were trying to reacclimate back to the States? What were the three top things that you missed the most?
One was definitely the food. It was, going from eating gelato every night and fresh pasta to kind of this like American food. So I definitely missed the food. And then especially I think the people, my friends that I made while I was abroad and those connections.
Did you make any local friends when you were there, outside of AIFS participants?
We did a little bit. My friend group and I did a little bit. We were very friendly with one of the waiters at PD Cafe, which is one of our favorites. We went like every Monday night. Towards the end of it, he gave us like his phone number. If we haven't had any questions about the city, he wrote it down like a business card and gave it to us. And then we met people at some of the other restaurants, some of the activities that we did. But we did meet a lot of other study abroad students from America while we were there.
And it's funny that you mentioned that you made friends with a waiter. I had a similar experience. I made friends with like a barista, and she showed me around Rome, and I got to see it in a local perspective. But it's just that kind of a place where you stand out a little bit as an American as much as you try to blend. It doesn't happen overnight. And the locals are so friendly. They kind of take you under their wing. So once you have that one person, you have get to see things through a local's eyes. So definitely stay in touch with your friend so you can go back and experience all the things. Tell me a little bit about your housing. Did you share a room? Did you have a roommate? What did that look like?
Yeah, so for Florence housing, they had the apartments and homestay for my semester. So I chose to do an apartment. And so I had 3 other roommates. And we got really lucky because we all had our own room in like a 4-bedroom apartment. So we were very fortunate with that. It was a ginormous room. I had 2 closets and everything, so I wasn't expecting that. But then I did have other friends who, I think, like one of my 2 really close girlfriends who lived together. I think they had like 6 girls in theirs, and it was 2 people per room. But I was so fortunate just to be able to have my own room and my own space a little bit.
Were there communal spaces as well, so you could kind of gather with people in the building that maybe you didn't share a room with or didn't have a class with, for those kind of social interactions, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so we lived next to London grad students actually, and so our apartments were connected by like a little foyer. So we were able to meet them a few times, and they actually invited us out for dinner one night while we were passing through. And then even a few times, we kind of had like a window across from each other through the courtyard. And so they would invite us over for dinner through that. Sometimes they'd like point to the pot and say to come over, the pasta that they had made. So it was cool.
You don't even have to leave your room for an invitation. So if you can just take us morning to night, just a typical day in the life in Florence.
I guess I'll go Monday through Friday because the weekends definitely looked a little different. So I had classes Monday through Thursday. Our university was closed on Fridays. So that was really nice to have that day set aside for traveling and just to kind of explore the city when I first got there. Monday, it usually looked up like I would wake up. My roommate learned how to use an espresso machine, like an old one that you brewed on the stove. So he actually had fresh like espresso made every morning, and I slept in the most, I think. So it was always like there waiting for me when I woke up in the morning. So it was very nice of them. And then I'd usually go to class. I tried to actually make my schedule kind of back to back a little bit so that I wouldn't have to leave and come back. So I think I had about 2.5 hours of classes. So I'd walk there from my apartment. It was about like a 10-minute walk. It was beautiful too. It was right over the river, and I could see the Ponte Vecchio right from my walk the whole way. And then I'd be in my like Mafia class, and I think I had Italian food and culture after that. Then with some of my friends from class, we'd go to gnocchi. It's like there's like a whole strip of just like right next to the school about like gustas, and it's like they have a gusta pizza. So it's like a pizza place, a gusta panini, so you can get your paninis, and they have like a fancier sit-down restaurant. So we'd grab a panini from there and then go back for our Italian class. And so I think classes usually got out around like 4-ish or 5-ish, depending on the day. And then I'd usually go back, try and get some homework done, a little work. It was never too much or overwhelming. It was mostly like do some reading for next class and be prepared for like a discussion. At like 6:30, 7-ish, I would meet my friends, and we'd either walk over to the Duomo side of the river because we lived on the opposite side. So we'd walk over there, and we'd go to the restaurants because we had the meal tickets through our program. So we were able to choose from a list of like 20 plus restaurants for us to choose from. Then usually we'd finish the night off trying one of the local cafe shops because they'd be open at night, or stop and get gelato. So we were usually out till 11, but it wasn't like doing anything crazy. It was like just enjoying the culture of like, and like someone would be talking to you till like 11:30 at night. One of the waiters would keep the shop open late or something.
You mentioned the Duomo. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the Duomo?
Yeah, so the Duomo is like the beautiful cathedral. If you look up Florence, it's either the Ponte Vecchio they'll show you, or like the beautiful red roof of the Duomo that you can see really from anywhere in the city. It's kind of like a like a central marker where you can tell where you're going. So that was such a beautiful thing. I remember one of our last days, we kept kind of pushing it off that like, oh, we'll get there, we'll get to the Duomo, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was like the interior is so beautifully decorated, and the outside's beautiful. It has all these little statues.
Yeah, it's so, you look up, it's so intricate, all the tiny little details. I know when I was there, they used to allow you to kind of walk the top rim. I don't know if they still allow people to do that. Were you able to go?
Yeah, so I had friends that went to the top, but I didn't even know that was an option until after I left, and I saw pictures, and I was like, oh my god, I so should have done that while I was there. But
Yeah.
there's actually a restaurant right across the street that we went to, and it has like a balcony that you can sit at, and it's at like the same level as the Duomo, so you can sit right across from it and look at the full dome of it. So it's really cool.
AIFS excursions. If you want to tell us a little bit about, were you able to go on any with us? If not, any weekend trips that you did outside of our program, just on your own leisure. Just tell us a little bit about what those weekends looked like.
Yes, so I did do the London overnight program right before, flew from Boston to London, spent 2 days in London, and that was awesome to kind of spend those 2 days getting adjusted to the European life and making connections and meeting people. And then we had our orientation in Rome for like the 6 days. And then when we finally got to Florence, I think my friends and I tried to take the first 2 weekends or so just to kind of get adjusted to everything going on around us and to be able to get to know our host city better. And then we did go to Portugal by ourselves one weekend. And then we also went on the AIFS provided trip to Venice for a Carnival. We also did the Sunday Carnival trip in Via Reggio. Those were the main showstoppers of our whole experience, I think.
What was Venice like?
Yeah, Venice was something I never could have dreamt about. I always saw pictures of it and thought it looked beautiful, but being there's a whole nother experience. No cars, just all the canals and all that. And we also went during Carnival, so it was like all the big masks and outfits and everyone was wearing. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
What did you pack that you didn't need? Is there anything you would highly recommend that students shouldn't forget for an Italy program? Just tell us a little bit about what that pre-departure packing experience was like.
It was a mess. I remember my mom and I were like fighting over it because I thought I could fit my whole closet into a few of my suitcases, and I absolutely couldn't. Like so many pairs of shoes, and that was my biggest regret, is that I brought so many pairs of shoes. We definitely wound up buying a lot of clothes, and then I had to buy another suitcase the day I was leaving. I was like, oh my god, nothing fits anymore. I bought so many clothes, but now when I come back and I wear them around my friends, everyone's like, oh my god, where did you get that? I'm like, Italy.
Yeah, sorry, it's one of a kind. Yeah, I was the same way. A lot of shoes, a lot of bags, anything leather, because it was more affordable to buy over there because it's such a big industry than it would be here. Do you feel like your sense of style, your fashion changed the longer you were there? Maybe you were trying to blend in a little more? What did that look like?
Absolutely. I think I definitely was trying not to stand out so much. And one of my really good friends actually bought a leather jacket while she was there. And I think it was kind of like the culture convinced her. Everyone was wearing them during wintertime, and no one had the puffy jackets that we were around in America. They all had these very fashionable jackets on. But for me, it was even the jeans and how they style things. I noticed I was trying to imitate it, and I still even do now more so. I brought that back with me to America, is how I dress. And I kind of always liked European fashion before, and so being there, it was so nice to be able to be surrounded by it, and people who dressed up every day. Even going to class, it seemed like more people dressed up than they do here in America.
People just, even when they're just leaving their house to run an errand, they look polished. In a
yeah,
sense.
my friends wore sweatpants. I had to grab pizza one night actually, and they came back and they're like, the looks that we got when we were out there, people looked like we were destroying their culture, because no one wears that. So it was definitely interesting, because I brought sweatpants. I didn't even wind up really wearing them.
Culture shock. I know we kind of phrased this a little bit earlier, but was there a moment once you had arrived to Florence where you were kind of like, all right, I'm in Florence now, not America, that something that clicked?
I remember we were walking along the river. It was this beautiful archway that we were walking under. I was like, oh my god, this isn't America anymore. And then especially my walk to class, I was so used to my college campus and walking just kind of around greenery and on a sidewalk, and then all of a sudden I was walking down these beautiful old streets from the 1400s, and I was like, oh my god, this is my new life. This is incredible.
It just feels like you're walking through history, like you're walking through a film. That's the other thing. Unless you live in a big city, it's just that pedestrian culture in Florence, or people are mopeds too. But I would say for the most part, it's pretty sparse in vehicles.
Yeah, mopeds are an interesting vehicle. I almost got picked off a few times, especially because people don't run in Florence. And my friend Victoria and I tried to go running one day to work out, and the mopeds were not happy with that.
Was there a public bus?
I don't remember. We really walked everywhere.
Mhm.
I remember there was like a train, not a sub. It wasn't a subway, but it was like ran on rails and went through part of the city. But I don't remember a bus. We never really needed that. We just walked everywhere.
So these programs, they're all about growth, personal, professional, academic, and you said you're a communications major. Are you a sophomore, senior, junior?
I'm a senior now.
So you're like right on the cusp of real world business here. So maybe you have your plans for after graduation, maybe not yet. How do you think you're going to take this experience and pursue your career with all of this that you've learned in mind? And how do you feel like you grew professionally, personally, academically?
Studying abroad in Florence has made me want to travel and incorporate traveling with whatever I want to do post-graduation. Right now I'm concentrating in public relations, so I'm hoping afterwards I can do something within the public relations field of tourism, or even governmental public relations with diplomacy or something like that. So studying abroad definitely made me realize that this is something I want to do and incorporate it into my life. But personally, I think it just really gave me the growth to be independent. I went studying abroad like by myself. I didn't know anyone that was going. It made me grow a lot, and it made me realize that I can do this, and I can go to a new country and make friends and make connections and still have a great time.
It really reels in your independence. You really recognize how much you're capable of. You kind of have to navigate travel on your own, navigate, am I going to be social? Am I going to be introverted? What am I going to take away from this experience in terms of the people that I meet? How do I continue those relationships? So yeah, it's just a completely different chapter in your life that's introducing you to parts of yourself that you haven't yet, been met with. You are dealing with students regularly that are looking to study abroad as an alumni ambassador. What do you find are the major reservations or things that deter a student from studying abroad? Maybe this looks different now. You are really only dealing with students that are looking to pursue this in a pandemic world. So what are some of the reservations that you hear frequently?
Yeah, so definitely the pandemic is a huge reservation. When talking to students on campus and then even getting some Instagram messages from prospective students, it's always, I really want to go abroad, but I'm worried about the pandemic experience. My biggest piece of advice is just go for it. AIFS was so there for us this whole experience. I remember we used to get, so many emails, especially the weeks leading up to going home, like every night, giving us an overview of what was going to happen if we had to go home, the departure plan. Once the level 3 warning did go out and that we were forced to come home, everything happened very quick, and AIFS was on top of it the whole time. I think the warning went out either Thursday or Friday night, and they were able to get people home starting that Monday. You have to take advantage of it. You're only in college once, so if you want to study abroad during that time, go for it. AIFS is going to be looking out for you, and they're never going to put you into a danger point. There's people, watching you and making sure everything's okay.
Everything that we do, how we operate, safety and the safety of students, health and wellness has to come first. Is there a magic phrase that you have? I know you said just do it, but is there something in your back pocket that you say to students just to ease the concern?
It's all going to be worth it. I know I was so stressed during the whole, visa process and application process. It all seems so overwhelming, and everything that you're so stressed about now and so worried about now is going to be such a small thought. I was so stressed about meeting people and making friends and not being an introvert while I was abroad. And it seems like such a silly idea now. It was nothing I should have been worried about. Everything you're worried about now is going to be so small when you're abroad.
We do have a question. What's your favorite word or phrase in Italian?
Probably just buongiorno. So,
Buongiorno.
Just positive, easy to say. And you're able to kind of make a connection with someone by saying that and at least start an interaction a little bit.
Yeah, and they can tell by your accent, potentially lack thereof, that you're not from here, and then they're like, oh, we'll speak English, and they like to practice on you the same way you like to practice on them, the locals.
Yeah, that was awesome too, especially while we were getting more intense in Italian class, to be able to kind of try and practice that out in the real world setting.
So you did take an Italian class while you were there, and you had not taken Italian prior to that initial class, correct?
No, I took Spanish in high school. and that was it.
And people think they're going to be similar. Italian's very different. Different dialect, different accent, different conjugations. I think you've probably seen this before, Patrick, but we're going to do a little speed round here. And so I'm just going to give you a word,
Okay.
and I want you to just give me the first word that comes to mind. And we're going to kick it off with our favorite food.
Gnocchi. That was my favorite there.
Gnocchi. Did you ever learn how to make your own gnocchi while you were there?
I didn't learn how to make gnocchi. I learned how to make ravioli, though. I did take an Italian ravioli class.
It feels like everyone over there is a good cook.
They just have so much more patience. Like, I just feel like I don't have the patience to take the time to do it. Everything was so fresh, and it was so different from America. Like, all the dinner food was so, like, fresh, and you could taste it as just cooked.
Yes, it's very different.
Yeah, I think my family's so sick of me, like, talking about Italian food.
Locals.
Friendly.
Next one, language.
Difficult. I think I went in expecting it to be a little easier and I was going to pick it up faster. Definitely the conjugation kind of stumped me sometimes, and it was definitely a little bit more difficult.
Did you feel maybe more encouraged to practice your language skills once you'd met locals, or was it kind of like, oh, they speak English and we can kind of rest on our laurels with that?
I think it was trying to blend in more and not stand out so much already as an American. I wanted to get to that point where it seemed like I belonged in the city instead of standing out like I did.
It's motivation, definitely, while you're on your program to just keep practicing, keep improving, talk to the locals, blend in, what have you. And I think they just appreciate when you try, right? A for effort for everyone. Awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely a nice introduction.
Favorite city? This could be the city that you studied abroad in. It could be one that you traveled to.
I would have to say Florence. Florence is easily one of my favorite cities that I've ever been to. And it was just beautiful, especially the Piazzale di Michelangelo that overlooks the Duomo and the river. I know one day we watched the sunset and we got like a fresh bread and some spreads to put on it. And it was like the most peaceful and beautiful thing I've done.
Landmarks. Historical, natural, anything.
Probably the Duomo. That was the one I was most excited to see, especially because I was Googling Florence for so long before I went and on TripAdvisor. And so I just kind of wanted to see that when I was there. Also, this isn't really a landmark, but the David statue, I was so excited to see that too.
Architecture.
Definitely, I would just say simply beautiful.
It feels like kind of what we said earlier, like you're just walking through history, right? Like it looks untouched. And then one word to describe your entire experience, if you can find one word.
Probably just growth. It was on the plane when I was coming back to America, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm coming home so much more different than when I left, and in all good ways, but it was just like I feel like I grew so much.
Did you kind of hear from your friends and your family? Like, did they think you were different?
I think my family they could definitely see kind of a shift in. I was definitely more independent than when I left. So yeah, I think that was definitely a big thing, was just like the independence level. I feel like I can do kind of whatever now, and I'm very proud of that and the growth that I had while I was there.
Excellent, Patrick. We'd love to hear that. Well, Patrick, thank you for being with us. A pleasure getting to know you, hearing about your experience. I think the proper way to say goodbye in Italian is just ciao, right?
Just simply ciao, I think.
Ciao. See you next time.
Ciao.